Okay, on to step number 2. I have my bucket of clay that I harvested. A sample from, I guess it's not as wet as I thought it was. This could be harder than I thought. Oh my gosh, this is hard as a rock. So we're gonna chisel this out. Maybe I'll get some of this over here. It looks a little bit more. This looks easier to, yeah, there we go. So this is gonna be the same crap. And you can see there's a lot of rock in there too, so you can filter that out. While Dexter plays King of the Mountain over here. And it's been soaking in some water longer than I had anticipated. It was supposed to be just the next day, and then we ended up having several thunderstorms this week, and then it's getting dark a lot earlier. So it's Sunday now, and we are ready to try and process this. So if you recall, it was fairly dry. So I put some water in it, and it's been sitting, and it's become kind of a sludge. So I'm gonna give it a really, really good stir. And then I have some different straining methods that we're going to go through and see how it does. Okay, so here's my setup. I have two. This one's a really large strainer, and that's just to get out any of the big chunks and rocks. And then I have this one. This is my next smallest one. I don't have, you'll see them using kind of like more of a smaller grid like hardware cloth. We don't have that. So we're going to start with this and see if it's an absolute disaster or not. I'm just going to put that one on the top. And unfortunately, I don't really have anything else. Wish I had, you know what, let me see if I can find a piece of wood to put across there. Hold on. Alright, so there we go. That should hold it. The wood's a little bit big, but whatever. This might be too thick to pour as well. Might have to thin it down or use a scoop. Hopefully this doesn't go crashing through. So maybe I will brace. I actually don't think that there's a lot of anything really big that's not going to come through there. There's a lot of grass though. That's in there. I don't know how I'm going to get that out. And this does not want to go through here. So the video I watched, he just used a hose to push it through. So if you could come and just rinse my hand off. There. See, look at that. I told you there was a lot of rocks in there. See, there's still a bit of clay. We'll give it one more quick rinse and then we'll dump it. Okay, and I'm just going to dump in the flour bed. I think it'll be fine. It's just pure clay. Just to show. Yeah, it just... I mean, there could still be a bit of sand and stuff in there, but, and again, if you're doing this process to make clay to make pottery with, at the end, there's a technique where you kind of pour off the water back and forth a bit to get the sand out. I'm not worried about that because I'm using mine for the wall of my terrarium. So sand in there is actually going to be a good thing because it'll serve as a temper and it will help it like to dry out. It'll dry more evenly. These just big rocks. Yeah, it's mainly just big rocks. pulling out a lot of debris. Look at all that grass and stuff. I didn't really weigh how much I started with either. Yeah, to get the water out, well, one thing I'm gonna do is it's gonna sit, right? So it's gonna sit for a few days and then it'll separate. So I'll probably end up with like 2 or 3 inches of water sitting on top that I can then.
And then would you do the pillowcase or like a cheesecloth?
And then pillowcase until it gets to the consistency you want to work with it. I don't mind if mine stays pretty wet. Like this consistency would be fine for me because I'm going to be mixing in some potting mix and what else? Oh, coco coir. So I'm making kind of a clay substrate type thing for the terrarium. So it's going to be a slightly different process than if I was going to be making something out of it. But if I have some left over,
I want to do pottery.
You want to do pottery? Well, yeah, we can just let it keep drying then. If you want to try making a bowl or something. The problem with that is then you got to figure out how you're going to fire it, right? So, videos I've been watching, the guy fires it in like a bonfire. So, if it's small enough, we could actually do it in the fire pit. So, I find that kind of fascinating. Okay, so I'm gonna put this back here like this. I'm gonna dump what's rest in here, and then we're gonna, I think, have to get the hose involved with a little bit more water. And it's getting heavier and heavier. So this will catch any stuff that kind of accidentally got forced through with my hand or the hose. Really trying to avoid as much water as I could, but I guess it's just part of the process. See, that looks like a lot of sand, so we don't want that. We're gonna rinse that out. At this point, we still don't know if it's good clay for working with. For pottery, kind of have to wait until you find it. So that's the joys of harvesting wild clay. But there's lots of videos on YouTube I've been watching. So as crazy as it may think, I'm not alone in this venture. All right, we're just gonna keep stirring it. I'm not pushing, I'm just trying to clear the screen. Here we are, this is our final pour. This is what is left. And I'm just gonna I'm gonna leave it. I don't really want any of that in there. It feels very sandy. So now the bucket, the straining process is done. We're just gonna let it sit. And if it takes longer than I want, you can add in a splash of vinegar. Apparently it will help the clay settle. So what's gonna happen now is the clay, you can see it's all up here, it's all mixed in, it's all brown. What's gonna happen is the clay is gonna settle to the bottom, and then I'm gonna end up with a few inches of clear water on top. And that I'm gonna pour off. And then at the end of that, just depending on how thick it is, if it's a consistency I wanna work with for the terrarium, then I'll just go from there. Otherwise it's gonna go into a pillowcase and get hung up to dry. So that is it for today's segment in DIY wild clay harvesting? I don't know what I'm calling this yet. Yeah, let's hope it works. See you next time. I'm actually pulling it back. And it feels very gritty. So.
Use that in a paint tin. Like one of those rock art.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was not the same lady.
No.
Okay, here we are several days later to pour off the water from the clay. So come down here, you can see it has settled. It has rained, so there's even more liquid in here than there was before, and there's a few leaves, but no worries. We're just gonna dump all of that off.
Whoa.
All right, so, it's thick. Okay, so now what we're gonna do, I do wanna kinda clean it. I don't want any kinda gross, bacteria or whatever in it in my terrarium. So I'm gonna add a hefty splash of hydrogen peroxide into it right now while it's still really liquidy. So I'm just gonna, like that. We're gonna stir it with something. Let's see what we have. Bowl here, and we're just gonna give it a good, so yeah, it's still pretty liquidy. So this is still gonna have to evaporate off of there. There's an awful glare. The consistency is, I'm gonna regret this in 2 seconds.
Rub it over your skin.
But there we have like a, what do you think, Dex? What does it smell like? That's some nice clay.
Is it good for your skin?
That is it for DIYing harvesting. Don't lick it. Stop licking it. That's gross. No. DIY harvesting wild clay. So next video that you see me with the clay, we are going to then be turning it into a backdrop for the terrarium. I'm going to be mixing in some, I don't know if I'm going to mix in moss, but I'm going to mix in some coco coir and a little bit of potting soil. So we're going to let it dry out a little bit longer, and we'll see you in a little bit. So don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you want to see what the heck am I going to do with this wild clay.